I am Jennifer Sonko, and this is QTV News, coming to you live from our studios on Kariba Avenue. Thanks for joining us. Here are the main news headlines. The Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, TANGO, has renewed support for all national transitional justice programs, and they made a plea for the recommendations of the yet-to-be-written TRRC to be implemented. A network of journalists on disaster risk reduction Gambia chapter has been launched. It hopes to build the capacity of journalists to educate and inform the public about disaster risk reduction. Those were the main headlines, and now the news in detail. Do stay with us. Thank you for joining us. The Association of Non-Governmental Organizations Friday renewed support for all national transitional justice programs. Even though no one knows what will be the final report, they echoed demands made by others and called on government to implement the TRRC recommendations as soon as they receive the final report later this year. And Sumana Isonyasi has the rest of that.
Addressing journalists, John Charles Njai, chairman of TANGO, says not only have they developed a roadmap to guide them on how they can support government in implementing the TRRC recommendations, but they have also commenced several activities such as meeting senior government officials and international partners, all in a bid to, quote, avoid mistakes of the past. The comment reinforces allegations by critics of government that the Janneh Commission of Inquiry's recommendations were selectively implemented. He reveals that TANGO plans to meet the TRRC and parliamentarians to discuss the Commission's recommendations and call on government to also expedite the implementation of other transitional justice programs.
Government opens up, we are ready to support, and we will also be holding government accountable, because what has happened, especially with the TRRC, lives have been lost. Blood, innocent blood has been shed. And Gambia, we need to realize this and take it seriously. And I believe that there will be political will. After all, it's the government that established the TRRC. And as I've read here, it's a legacy that they can be proud of. So we stay on the side of optimism.
Explaining TANGO's plans as outlined in the roadmap, Madi Jobate, a member of the civil society organizations, says TANGO may consider organizing a national dialogue on the TRRC recommendations.
Parties, for that matter. Of course, these recommendations, TRRC, we know it has been contentious. So we would have to meet various bodies, religious bodies, traditional authorities, because it's important in terms of a reconciliation, in terms of calming everyone down, in terms of maintaining the unity, the cohesion in our society. So we intend to meet the Supreme Islamic Council, the Gambia Christian Council, and similar bodies, groups, youth groups, local government authorities, and as I said, international partners, whether it's EU or UN, ECOWAS, and some embassies that play critical role in the international justice process.
Earlier, TANGO chairman Mr. Njai expressed concern with the slow and sometimes lack of progress in the civil service and security sector reforms, and he emphasized the urgency to implement these reforms to promote good governance, adding that TANGO is determined to play a leading role in supporting government, especially in implementing the TRRC recommendations. Ansmane Sonyasi for QTV News.
Now, the Network of Journalists on Disaster Risk Reduction, NJDRR, Gambia chapter, was launched on Friday to build the capacity of journalists to educate, inform the public about disaster risk reduction. Omar P. Jallo attended the launch and he files into this report.
The Network of Journalists on Disaster Risk Reduction, Gambia chapter, comprises journalists who specialize or want to specialize in disaster reporting. It is registered and affiliated to the National Disaster Management Agency NDMA, ECOWAS, AU and the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction on the implementation of the African Union Roadmap on implementing the Sendia Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. Presenting the network's activities and concept, Jennifer Sonko, the network's public relations officer, said the network is created to disseminate information to the public about disaster risk reduction and the causes of disasters to ensure stakeholders put in place the necessary mechanisms to mitigate effects of disasters.
Previously, before we decided that we are coming with this network, disasters were reported only when they occur and not using that disaster risk reduction dimension. And particularly, as a network, we are also trying to help our partners in implementing the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030.
Launching the network, the Executive Director of National Disaster Management Agency, Sana Dahaba, said the NDMA is proud to be associated with the network of journalists as the two share the same vision of raising public awareness on disaster risk reduction for safer and more resilient communities. He adds that this network of journalists will help the country's commitment towards regional, continental and global DRR frameworks as the Gambia is a signatory to the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030.
Having a mutually beneficial relationship with the network will help us reach our target of infiltrating hard-to-reach communities who are one of the most vulnerable groups during disaster situations. Information sharing is indeed a crucial component in disaster risk management as it serves as an early warning system mechanism before a disaster occurs.
Speaking via Zoom, representatives of the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction, the African Union Commission and the Disaster Risk Reduction Association of Journalists all expressed delight for partnering with the network and gave assurances of their institution's readiness to support the network.
The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction emphasizes the need to manage risk rather than disasters. UNDRR welcomes the efforts of the Gambia to update their DRR policy and remains ready to support reporting against the Sendai Framework Monitor.
Speaking on behalf of the national coordinator of the network, Cherno Bob, the Secretary General of the network, reveals that in 2019, with support from the UN in collaboration with NDMA, 4 Gambian journalists benefited from a 2-day training in Accra, Ghana, on the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Sustainable Development Goals.
NJDRR is conscious of the need for Gambian journalists who specialize in reporting on disaster risk reduction to come together to form a common front with development partners in their quest to sustainably and continuously disseminate information on DRR in the Gambia. The network also aims at building the capacity of Gambian journalists to improve their skills and knowledge on reporting on disaster and its related issues.
The network aims to organize training for Gambian journalists who specialize or want to specialize in disaster reporting. The motto of the network is to inform the public on DRR matters to save lives. Reporting for QTV News, I am Omar P. Jallo.
From that report on the launching of NJDRR, we will now take a short commercial break. When we come back, we have more local news stories. Do stay tuned.
The best product in town is back. QCell's MiFi router. Get the best MiFi in the country for just $2,800 and connect up to 15 users with 4G internet speeds and a long-lasting battery life. So rush now to any of our customer care locations and get the best for less while stocks last. For more info, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Senior Boss, the Gambia's quality network. We innovate, others follow.
Welcome back from that short commercial break. If you're just tuning in, this is QTV News and I am Jennifer Sonko. Now, a range of medical equipment were presented this week to the Ministry of Health by the European Union in collaboration with the United Nations Development Programme and ECOWAS. Lola M. Kamara has the rest of that.
The medical equipment are for the fight against the coronavirus. They include throat swabs gloves, oxygen concentrator, gowns, oxygen face mask, specimen collection swabs, among other medical valuables. At the presentation on Saturday, the UNDP residence representative and Isabel Blockel, German charged the affairs, both said the supplies will be useful in supporting the ministry's fight against the coronavirus and reiterated their organization's continuous support to the country. The EU ambassador to the Gambia, Corrado Pampaloni, outlined that the European Union has continued to act fast to cope the global spread of COVID-19 and contributed immensely to the fight against the pandemic as part of its external strategy.
38.5 billion euros in response to the COVID-19 outbreak worldwide, of which 8 billion are for Africa. The EU support to West Africa to the West Africa region amounted to more than 1 billion delivered notably through a quick reorientation of resources in support to the health system and measures to mitigate the economic and social impact.
Vaba Gayflow, the ECOWAS country representative, commended the Health Ministry for ensuring that the country's healthcare system is given top priority.
When it comes to ECOWAS matters, like I always say, they stand firmly. Like I was very impressed when I learned that when it came to receiving the materials, in some countries there were problems. But the moment you call, if it's even in the night, the permanent secretary or whoever, they are ready to mobilize the team to be at the airport and make sure we don't have challenges. And I think this is very, very encouraging, and we'd like to encourage the team to continue the good work.
Receiving the medical supplies, Dr. Ahmadulamin Samate, the Minister of Health, says the resources at our health sector are limited, but the government is making efforts to have a robust healthcare system. Dr. Samate thanked the developmental partners for such important gesture.
Really, there have been capacity gaps. We knew there are capacity gaps, but when COVID-19 struck, we realized that there have been big capacity gaps in many of our countries, and Gambia is not left behind. So certainly the government has started. The resources are not enough. They are not close to being enough because there are a lot of competing areas in the country when it comes to development. But the health sector, I must say, not because we are in the health sector, but we need to have a robust health sector because a healthy population becomes the engine of development.
When the coronavirus hit the Gambia, various institutions, organizations and philanthropists responded by making significant contributions to the country's health sector to help combat and mitigate the effects of COVID-19. For QTV News, Lolly M. Kamara.
Now, the Gambia National Youth Service Scheme, NYSS, on Tuesday began a week-long training for the second batch of corps members. The event was held in Janjanbureh in CRR, from where our reporter Ibrahim Jallo sends in this report.
NYSS is charged with the responsibility for molding the youth to promote community development and self-reliance and be resourceful for national development. Mustafa Baji, the Deputy Director of NYSS, said there is no doubt that the existence of peaceful and stable society depends on the productive engagement of its youth.
You mentioned NYSS stand for the National Youth Service Scheme that has supported young people in skill development. And we have different programs, but this one that we are doing right now is called ATP. ATP will target those who have never been to school or informal school, that's DARA, or they just fall out from grade 6 down. And this is what we call ATP. This is the second batch that we are doing. And this time around we are decentralizing to all the region. We are here in Janjanbureh. We're going to be here for 1 week.
Abasanyang, the governor of CRR, underscores the importance of youth empowerment for national development.
In the growth and development, youth are the engine of any growth. So we're looking at empowering them through these training programs, which instill not only the package on their modus of operandi, but it instills discipline in them, which is key in every person's life. So we believe this training will be very paramount in the living or in the lives of these young people.
Ibrahim Sanyang, Regional Youth Chairperson in CRR, was part of the 17th batch of the NYSS.
When I was there, we, as the batch 17, we were handled by soldiers. So this is why I said these people now, what they have is ready-made. When soldiers handle us, we were confined in one place for 1 month, 2 weeks, without going anywhere. You have no freedom. Even if you are to eat, you eat less and do business. This is what we know. This is why we are well drained. We are well drained.
Isa Kulubali, a participant, said youth must change their way of life to succeed.
So, money left a kuleka,
If you want something, you have to do something. The youth, we have to get up and work hard towards the development of our country so that there will be changes in the system.
The NYSS offers apprenticeship training program in plumbing, tailoring, bricklaying, auto mechanic, and rice agronomy, amongst others. For QTV News, I am Ibrahim Jallo.
Good to see NYSS embarking on activities. Now, the Ministry of Health confirmed its first case of COVID-19 mid-March last year, prompting the closure of schools. This affected face-to-face learning, so distant education was introduced for the first time as the solution, obviously. Our regional reporter Bakari Balde visited a school in the Lower River region to assess the impact of COVID-19. This is his report.
Electricity, radio and computers were the major factors that hinder students getting the right lessons during the closure of schools. Many of them had no option but to engage in domestic chores while awaiting a suitable solution. The principal of Soma Upper and Senior Secondary School, Usman Jaju, explained how the pandemic impacted his school and the measures taken by them to remedy the situation.
The impact of corona in the schools are numerous, but we can dilate on few the major things. That is one, it affects the performance of the schools, because if you look into it, the contact hours, we lose a lot. I think from March up to July, that end, we miss classes, and although we are on this online, but not all the students are having this smartphone, and that affects the performance of most of them. As we are in the provinces here, not all students have TV in their homes. Not all students have electricity in their homes, and that also has an impact. And not all of them also have radio as a means of communication to listen to these online classes and these radio program classes. With all those, we are trying to mix, to double up, to speed up, and to make sure that we lost hours contact were recovered.
Lamin Nimbalan, the school's head of environment and physical education, disclosed the challenges they face as teachers in covering the syllabus. He mentioned that the performance of students across a range of grade levels were affected and outlined how the school is coping.
Teachers also find it very difficult because they have to go back to the other grade, try to cover that time, and also the curricular grades where the students are. And the teachers in those classes also are finding it very difficult in order to complete the syllabus of grade 9 and 11. Okay, looking at the school environment, we are trying by all means to do with the measures that that we have to take in order to control this COVID.
Adam Abayo, a parent, emphasized that the COVID-19 restriction greatly retarded their children's education. According to her, in as much as students resume normal learning, they should be cognizant of the safety precautions and concentrate on their education.
Corona is still affecting us, and children's education has stalled. We are still suffering. One should just follow health guidelines by washing hands. Take care of the children and keep your environment clean.
Howard Job, a vendor who sells food at the school, narrated how the vendors suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic and further advises students to take care of themselves and follow the Ministry of Health guidelines.
We sell at the school, but parents don't let their children come to school. We are following the health guidelines they told us. They ask us to wash our hands, wear face masks, and maintain social distancing.
Finding Bajo, the school's head boy, and Ruget Kamara, the head girl, highlighted how the pandemic impacted their education as students preparing for WAS 2021. To many, the COVID is here to stay like any other viral disease. Therefore, one needs to take the necessary steps to avoid contracting the disease and ensure a gradual return to normalcy. Reporting for QTV News in Jarasoma, I am Bakari Balde.
President Adama Barrow met with local authorities at the State House Grand Tent in a gathering linked to the presidential elections later this year. Our Ajibintu Drame has the rest of that.
As election approaches, it seems rather a much more tight and competitive election and campaign in the Gambia's elections history. President Barrow met with an estimated 200 community leaders, including alcalos, sefos, chiefs from across the country, with many of those present indicating support for the president in this year's election. Here is what some of the speakers had to say. Firstly, we hear from Usman Bojang, the alcalo of New Yundum.
We come to meet you, President Barrow. Today we are not here to beg you. Anytime we come and ask for help, you always help us. But today we came to tell you that come December 4, 2021, you will be our president. We are here for everybody. Anything that will bring conflict in this country, we should not agree with it.
Henry Gomez, President Barrow's special advisor on youth matters, directed part of his speech at the UDP leader, saying,
Ousseynou, maget na be pare. Ousseynou amatu dole. Yan bolen joxe Ousseynou deka bi.
Ousseynou cannot lead this country. He will already be old. Ousseynou doesn't have power anymore. If you give Ousseynou the country, he will turn the State House into a hospital and turn his office into a pharmacy.
President Adama Barrow, who played host to the gathering, touched on various issues, including these.
I
am behind you, Alcalos, and we are working together because we want the country to go further, and we can't sit and watch outsiders to intimidate us. Every society, there is a leader, and it's also a position of responsibility and trust.
As the last person to speak, the meeting ended and they departed with his words ringing in their ears. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
From that story, I believe that's all we have for you in this edition of QTV News, but let's take a look at our main headlines. The Association of Non-Governmental Organizations has renewed support for all national transitional justice programs, and they made a plea for the recommendations of the yet-to-be-written TRRC report to be implemented. A network of journalists on disaster risk reduction, NJDRR Gambia chapter, has been launched. It hopes to build the capacity of journalists to educate and inform the public about disaster risk reduction. Well, that is all we have for you in this edition of QTV News. Do join us tomorrow, same time for more news. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.